The German Shepherd puppy burst from the trees like he was running from something invisible, paws scraping the gravel, chest heaving, eyes locked with a kind of panic no one expected from a dog so young. He circled, pulled, stopped, then ran back toward the dark stretch of forest he had come from, refusing to leave. His body trembled, not with fear but urgency, as if time itself was running out. Something was wrong. Something was waiting. And when a Navy SEAL finally followed the puppy into the shadows, no one was prepared for what he was about to find. Because who was the puppy trying so desperately to save? The man in the wheelchair had once lived a life built on movement, discipline, and control, but now his world moved at the slow, careful pace of spinning wheels and quiet mornings, framed by the edge of a small rural town where pine trees pressed close and silence lingered longer than it should. His days followed a gentle rhythm shaped by routine, sunlight through the windows, and the steady presence of a German Shepherd puppy who seemed to grow more aware with every passing week. The puppy had been dismissed by neighbors as too young, too small, too unfocused to be anything more than a companion, but from the moment he arrived, he had attached himself to the man with an intensity that felt instinctive, almost ancient, as if he understood something no one else did. He slept near the wheelchair, followed every turn of the wheels, watched every door, every shadow, every sound, his ears constantly shifting, his eyes always searching. Their bond was quiet but deep, forged in shared stillness, in long afternoons where the man rested and the puppy learned the shape of his breathing, the tone of his movements, the subtle signals of comfort and distress. Outside, the land stretched wide and deceptively peaceful, a mix of dirt paths, forest edges, and forgotten service roads that cut through the trees, places where sounds carried strangely and help was never close. The puppy explored these edges cautiously, never straying far, always checking back, always returning to the man's side as if pulled by an invisible thread. Over time, small changes began to surface, easy to miss if you weren't watching closely. The puppy started stopping mid-step during their daily routines, head lifting, body stiffening, nose testing the air as if reading messages written where humans couldn't see. At night, he slept lighter, waking suddenly, scanning the darkness beyond the windows, his body positioned protectively without ever being taught how. The man noticed, though he couldn't explain it, a growing sense that something in their quiet world had shifted, like the pause before a storm that hadn't yet announced itself. On certain days, the puppy refused to move forward along familiar paths, planting his paws and glancing back repeatedly, restless and alert, as if warning without knowing how. The forest that once felt distant now seemed closer, heavier, its silence no longer comforting but watchful. Even so, life continued because it always does, because danger rarely announces itself clearly. The man trusted the routines, trusted the calm, trusted that the world would keep its distance just a little longer. The puppy, however, seemed to know better, his loyalty sharpening into vigilance, his youth giving way to something raw and urgent. And beneath the ordinary days and gentle moments, something unseen was already closing in, waiting for the moment when quiet would no longer be enough. The change did not arrive all at once but crept forward in fragments, in the way the air felt heavier during the mornings and how the forest no longer released its sounds so easily, holding them back as if listening. The puppy was the first to fully respond, his body language shifting from curious to guarded, his movements tighter, more deliberate, as though every step now carried weight. He began positioning himself between the wheelchair and the open spaces around them, lying where he could see the longest stretch of road, lifting his head at distant noises that never seemed close enough to explain his reaction. On their daily outings along the narrow dirt path near the tree line, his pace slowed, his nose working constantly, tracking invisible trails, stopping abruptly to stare into gaps between the trunks where shadows layered themselves unnaturally. The man felt the tension through the leash, through the way the puppy leaned back toward him, anchoring himself, refusing to be rushed. It was subtle at first, easy to rationalize as growing instincts or puppy nerves, but the unease followed them home, seeping into the quiet spaces where comfort once lived. At night, the puppy no longer slept fully, waking at the faintest disruption, ears flicking, muscles taut, body angled toward the doors and windows. The man noticed how often the puppy checked on him, pressing close, circling the wheelchair before settling, as if counting, as if making sure he was still there. Outside, unfamiliar sounds drifted through the trees, low rustling, distant snaps of branches that echoed longer than they should have, leaving behind a silence that felt deliberate. The puppy reacted to each one with increasing intensity, hackles lifting, a soft vibration running through his frame as he stared into darkness that refused to explain itself. Days passed, and the puppy's behavior grew more urgent, less patient, pulling insistently in certain directions, then freezing, refusing to move at all, his eyes locked on nothing the man could see. The forest seemed closer now, its edge pressing inward, the paths narrowing, the open sky shrinking beneath the canopy. On one afternoon that felt no different from the rest, the puppy abruptly spun, ears pinned, body low, as a sound rolled through the trees that was too slow to be wind and too heavy to be an animal moving naturally. The man felt a chill crawl up his spine as the puppy planted himself squarely in front of the wheelchair, staring down the path they had just come from, unmoving, unblinking. Time stretched thin in that moment, the air thick with waiting, until the sound faded and the puppy reluctantly allowed them to turn back, guiding them home with short, urgent glances over his shoulder. From then on, the puppy's vigilance sharpened into something closer to fear mixed with resolve, a readiness that never switched off. He began reacting before noises occurred, standing suddenly, pacing, positioning himself as if anticipating an intrusion rather than responding to one. The man tried to reassure himself that isolation played tricks on perception, that the world had not suddenly grown hostile, but his confidence wavered each time the puppy refused to relax. One evening, as the light drained from the sky and shadows pooled at the forest's edge, the puppy rushed to the window and pressed his face against the glass, body rigid, breath shallow, tracking movement beyond sight. The man strained to see, but the darkness offered nothing back, only the unsettling awareness that the puppy was responding to something real. That night, sleep came in fragments, broken by the puppy's restless movement, by the sense that the house itself was listening. Morning brought no relief. The puppy refused food, paced continuously, stopping often to stare toward the forest as if drawn by an invisible pull. When they ventured outside again, the tension snapped into urgency. The puppy suddenly lunged forward, then doubled back, circling the wheelchair, pulling, stopping, pulling again, his behavior no longer cautious but insistent, frantic. The man felt his own heart race as the puppy led him off the usual path, toward a narrower service road that cut deeper into the trees, a route rarely used and poorly maintained. The forest swallowed the light quickly there, the sounds of the town fading until only the crunch of wheels and paws remained. Halfway down the road, the puppy froze, then bolted ahead, leash slipping loose as he disappeared between the trees. Panic surged as the man called out silently, helplessly, the forest closing in, the air thick with dread. Seconds stretched unbearably until the puppy reappeared, racing back, eyes wild, fur bristling, teeth bared not in aggression but warning. He grabbed the leash again, tugging violently, trying to pull the wheelchair forward, then turning back toward the deeper woods, repeating the motion over and over as if trapped between staying and going. The man's breath caught as he realized the puppy was not reacting to danger approaching but to danger already present, something that had already changed their situation beyond retreat. The ground beneath the wheels grew uneven, the path narrowing further, the forest pressing tight around them. Every instinct screamed that they were no longer alone. The puppy suddenly stopped again, staring into a thicket ahead where the undergrowth was disturbed, flattened in a way that spoke of recent movement. The silence deepened, oppressive, broken only by the puppy's low, vibrating tension. The man felt a surge of helplessness as the puppy leaned into him, pressing his body close, protective, refusing to move away even as his eyes begged him to follow. And then, without warning, the puppy spun and sprinted away from the wheelchair, racing back the way they had come, disappearing down the path with reckless speed, leaving behind a chilling realization that whatever he had sensed was no longer something he could face alone. The moment the puppy vanished down the path, the world seemed to tilt into chaos, the forest closing in with a suffocating weight as the man in the wheelchair sat stranded on uneven ground, the silence now so complete it roared in his ears, every instinct telling him something irreversible had just begun. Minutes stretched into something shapeless as shadows shifted and the air grew colder, the disturbed earth ahead a silent warning of proximity, of something unseen but near, and with each passing second the man's vulnerability pressed heavier, the reality of his immobility settling into his chest like a physical force. Somewhere beyond the trees, the puppy ran with reckless determination, paws tearing across gravel and dirt, lungs burning, guided not by training but by raw instinct and loyalty sharpened into purpose, his small body carrying a weight far greater than his size. He burst onto a wider road where chance and timing collided, nearly colliding with a man whose posture, awareness and stillness marked him as different before any uniform or title ever could, a Navy SEAL moving through the area with the quiet vigilance of someone who never truly relaxes. The puppy did not hesitate or waver, circling, pulling, darting back toward the forest, eyes locked with an urgency that cut through skepticism and routine, his entire body radiating a single message that could not be ignored. The SEAL followed, first cautiously, then faster, reading the dog's movements the way he had once read terrain and threat patterns, recognizing the unmistakable signs of a creature responding to immediate danger. The forest swallowed them quickly, branches snapping under hurried steps, the light dimming as they pushed deeper, the puppy constantly checking back, adjusting his pace, refusing to lose the human now racing behind him. As they reached the narrow service road, the atmosphere shifted violently, tension spiking as the seal spotted signs that confirmed the puppy's alarm: disturbed ground, broken brush, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Ahead, the wheelchair came into view, isolated and exposed, the man frozen in a moment stretched too long, relief and fear colliding as the puppy surged forward, throwing himself against the wheels, circling protectively, placing his body between his owner and the darkness beyond. The reunion lasted only a heartbeat before the threat fully revealed itself, movement erupting from the trees in a way that shattered any illusion of safety, the danger no longer abstract but immediate, closing distance with terrifying speed. The puppy reacted instantly, launching himself forward with fearless intensity, drawing attention away, barking sharply, positioning himself as a barrier despite the odds, his small frame squared against something far larger and far more dangerous. The seal moved without hesitation, the years of training taking over, assessing angles, distance, timing, the forest suddenly a familiar battlefield as he placed himself beside the wheelchair, creating space, control, a fighting chance. The air filled with motion and urgency, every second compressed, the puppy darting, feinting, refusing to retreat even as the threat advanced, his loyalty manifesting not as hesitation but as defiance. The man watched in helpless awe and terror, understanding in that moment that the puppy had not run away earlier out of fear but out of strategy, that he had chosen to leave in order to return with help, to bring back the only force capable of changing the outcome. The confrontation peaked in a blur of movement and soundless intensity, the seal intercepting at precisely the right moment, the threat halted, redirected, neutralized before it could reach the wheelchair, before it could turn the puppy's bravery into tragedy. When the forest finally stilled again, the silence felt different, lighter, broken only by heavy breathing and the soft, frantic movement of the puppy as he rushed back to his owner, pressing close, circling, checking, making sure the world had not taken what he was sworn to protect. The man's hands trembled as they rested against warm fur, the reality of survival crashing down in waves, gratitude and disbelief blurring together as the seal stood watch, scanning the trees, ensuring the danger was truly gone. In that clearing, surrounded by shadows that had nearly claimed everything, the truth settled unmistakably into the air, that a dog everyone had doubted had read the world correctly when no one else could, had made a decision far beyond his years, had chosen courage over comfort and action over fear. The puppy did not celebrate or seek attention, simply returned to his place at the wheelchair's side, eyes still alert, body still ready, loyalty unbroken and unquestioning, as if saving the life he loved was never a choice at all but an unspoken promise written into his very being. And as the forest slowly released its grip and light filtered back through the trees, one undeniable fact remained, that without the instincts of a young German shepherd and the bond that drove him, this story would have ended very differently. The forest had settled into a fragile quiet, the echoes of chaos replaced by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the town beyond, but for the man in the wheelchair, the hours that followed were anything but still. Relief collided with exhaustion, and the reality of what had almost happened pressed heavily on his chest, a weight that could only be eased by the small, steadfast presence of the German shepherd puppy who refused to leave his side. The seal remained close for reassurance, his watchful eyes scanning the periphery even as the immediate danger had vanished, offering a steadying presence that mirrored the puppy's protective vigilance. The man's hands trembled as he ran them over the dog's thick fur, feeling the heat of exertion, the tension of adrenaline, and the quiet pulse of loyalty beneath, a rhythm that had guided every decision, every desperate movement that had kept him safe. Slowly he allowed himself to breathe, to take stock of the fact that he had survived, that the nightmare that had brushed so close had been stopped by instinct, courage, and an unbreakable bond. The puppy, now panting and still tense, circled again, checking each corner, each shadow, as if ensuring no threat remained, before finally resting his head against the man's lap, a silent acknowledgement that the ordeal was over and that he had done everything he could to protect the one he loved. In the days that followed, life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the ordinary routines were now layered with profound gratitude and unspoken understanding. Every glance, every movement, every soft nudge of the puppy's nose against a hand carried the memory of what had almost been lost and the quiet assurance that no matter what, he would always be there. Friends and neighbors, once casual observers of a young dog and a man in a wheelchair, began to notice the depth of connection, the intensity of loyalty that transcended words, as the man slowly recounted, piece by piece, the events, though even the full retelling could not capture the terror, the split-second decisions, the instinctive heroism that had saved a life. The puppy's training, his natural instincts, and his unwavering attention became a part of their daily rhythm in a way that was both comforting and humbling. Every walk was now a shared vigil, every path a reminder of the line between safety and danger, and every day a celebration of the courage that had been quietly present all along. Nights remained quieter but never completely calm, the puppy's ears still twitching at faint sounds, a reminder that vigilance and loyalty are not switched off, but the man found solace in this constant presence, knowing that he was watched over, guided, and loved in a way that transcended human understanding. Visits from the seal became moments of reflection rather than intervention, conversations about instinct, timing, and decision, yet the most profound lessons were left unspoken, absorbed in the glance between the man and his dog, in the weight of shared survival and the understanding that courage comes in many forms, not always grand or visible, but present in the moments of decisive action. Slowly, the man began to regain confidence in his mobility and independence, bolstered not just by his own perseverance but by the unwavering support of a companion whose loyalty had proven itself under circumstances no human could replicate. The bond deepened into something almost sacred, a living testament to trust, courage, and the profound interconnection between species, where the puppy's instincts and the man's reliance on them wove together into a seamless, unbreakable thread of protection and devotion. As weeks turned into months, the story of the rescue spread quietly through the community, neighbors and friends moved by the courage of the young dog, inspired by the reminder that heroism is not reserved for humans alone, that acts of bravery often come from those we least expect, and that loyalty and love are forces capable of shaping outcomes in ways unimaginable. Each day became an opportunity to honor that bond, from simple gestures like allowing the puppy first choice of resting spots, to long walks where the man allowed himself to fully trust his companion's guidance, to quiet evenings where no words were needed because presence alone spoke volumes. The emotional scars left by the near tragedy were softened by gratitude and intimacy, a shared history of fear and survival, yet they served as enduring reminders of vulnerability, the fine edge between danger and safety, and the immense courage that can exist in even the smallest, fur-covered beings. Friends who visited noticed subtle changes in the man's demeanor, a renewed attentiveness, a gentleness born of humility and awe, and they remarked on the undeniable shift in the puppy's confidence and composure, as though the ordeal had accelerated his maturity, deepened his awareness, and cemented his role not just as companion but as guardian. Moments of reflection revealed to the man that this bond, tested in the crucible of threat, had taught lessons about reliance, instinct, and the courage to act without hesitation, that true loyalty manifests in deeds rather than words, and that sometimes the quietest, smallest presence in a room can wield the most profound influence over life and death. And as he wheeled himself slowly through familiar paths, the puppy always at his side, ears alert, eyes scanning, heart tethered to his own in unwavering synchronization, the man realized that what had occurred in that darkened stretch of forest was more than survival. It was a revelation of love in its purest, most powerful form, an understanding that the bond between human and animal is capable of transcending fear, bridging vulnerability, and inspiring awe in ways no human act alone could. Life had changed irrevocably, colored now by the memory of danger, by the exhilaration of heroic action, and by a quiet, abiding gratitude that pulsed in every touch, every glance, every shared breath. The man could feel the depth of loyalty not just as a concept but as a living, breathing force, an unspoken pact that had been forged in terror and solidified in triumph. The puppy had not only saved a life, he had reaffirmed the profound truth that courage does not belong solely to humans, that the capacity to act selflessly, to protect, to love, is written into the very essence of those we share our lives with. And as the sun set behind the trees, bathing the world in amber light, the man rested his hands on the puppy's head, the weight of gratitude and awe pressing into his chest, knowing without doubt that loyalty, bravery, and love had converged in a single remarkable creature, leaving behind a story that would endure far beyond that moment, a living testament to the power of the bond between human and dog, and the quiet heroism that can change a life forever.